Good evening. We are about to start. Last stranglers coming in. All right, good evening, everyone. And welcome to the esynergy Tech Series. It's great to see all of you here. I'm Ulrike Eder, I'm Chief Marketing Officer at esynergy. And before we start, a couple of things. You will see swag dotted around the room. Please take whatever you see. There's really great chocolates. They're Tony's. They're really good. Also, we'll do a Q&A after the panel. And I hope your catching is good, because we'll throw this around. But yeah, so if you have any questions throughout or after the panel, we'll use this. And a little bit about the topic and the theme of tonight. Security and resilience, obviously long has moved from the server room to the boardroom. Regulations are tightening. The regulators and boards are asking tougher questions than they have before. AI is accelerating risks faster than many of us can keep up with. And security is now a leadership challenge. It's an innovation challenge. It's a governance challenge. And it's a people and cultural challenge. And this is why we have started the esynergy security practice. Too long, security teams have been blamed as the ones who always say no, the blockers, the people that slow things down. And with our practice, we really want to change that. We want to make sure, and we're making sure that security is baked into our delivery rather than being bolted on at the end. Tonight's panel really reflects the broad spectrum that this challenge affects. We have CIOs, CISOs, a CTO, a Chief Product Officer, from many sectors, banking, insurance, not-for-profit, the public sector, diversity in perspectives, answers, thinking, sectors. We're here for all of it. People will disagree, and that's what we like to see. You'll hear our panel tackle the questions maybe many of you are asking yourselves today. Who really owns security? How do I implement AI without giving my CISO a permanent twitch? And how do we make security everyone's responsibility that goes beyond the poster in the kitchen? Now, there will be audience polls. So for once, and I don't say that a lot, the use of your phone is encouraged throughout this performance. And if you haven't yet, please scan the QR codes with your phone. That gives you access to the polling system.
They are safe.
They are safe.
Promise.
Hosting tonight is Grant Ongers, our head of security practice, who made and built the practice around a very simple idea. Security should make delivery better, easier, and not worse. He also has a habit of asking questions you don't really want to be asked. Tonight, lucky me, those won't be directed at me, but at our lovely panel. Let's get started. Grant, over to you.
All right. Thank you guys very much. Hi, I'm Grant Ongers. Ulrike kind of framed what we were going to talk about this evening. And I think what I want to just add to that is that the role of the CTO or the Chief Information Officer or the Chief Product Officer has always been involved and always been responsible for IT and technology, information and technology in spaces. Over the years, we've seen a slicing out of some portion of that work to form the CISO role. And tonight on the panel, I'm going to have both the Chief Information or Chief Technology Officers as well as the Chief Information Security Officers who deal with that slight aspect of work there as well. I'd like to invite my fellow panel members to join me on stage, if you wouldn't mind doing that. Come on up, grab a seat. So to give the example, hi, I'm Grant Ongers, and I am the Head of Security Practice for esynergy.
Hello everyone, I'm Sapna Patel. I'm CISO at the King's Trust.
I'm John Crichton. I'm Chief Information Officer at Gallagher Re.
I'm Arthur Lang. I'm the CTO at Shawbrook Bank, and previous to that, I was the CPO.
Hi, good evening. I'm Mun Valiji. I'm the Group CISO at Close Brothers. Hi, I'm Tim Britton. I'm the Chief Product Officer, HM Courts and Tribunals.
Thank you all for joining me. So I'm going to start with a nice easy question to start with. So who in your organization owns, by owns I mean is accountable for, security? Who wants to jump in on that one?
Well, at our company, I'm a divisional CIO, so there's a CISO at the corporate level, and there's BISOs in each division. And the BISOs report into the CISO at the corporate level with a dotted line to the CIO. That's how it's organized for us.
So who owns it then? The CIO or the CISO?
Both.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I can go. So within regulated business, merchant banking, so I'm the CISO reporting into a chief risk officer as part of a non-financial risk function. For the last 14 months as I've been there, that's traditionally, within the banking organization, the role. It was formerly within a group coup function, at a restructure. And then the last 15 years, it's generally been within a CTO, CIO function, where essentially, to the point earlier, the CISO or the security director is effectively part of the technology business.
Yeah. I mean, so very similar. The CISO is within the CTO function. And so whilst the CISO's role is accountable for information security, that rolls up into the responsibility of the CTO function.
Okay, so I've got the two of you talking now. I've got another question because we've got security and we've got the CISO and CIO side of things on the table. Security is often seen as the blocker. Is that still the case in your organization? Are you seen as the blocker? Lynn?
I think it's changing. We're seeing, certainly in the organization, so Close Brothers today, prior to that, was Trainline, Sainsbury's, so organizations that were pushing much more digital enablement, much more customer proximity, and much more agile in their thinking and outlook. As a result of that, there was absolutely a recognition and a realization that security teams couldn't be there to say no. They're seen as an approval authority, and still in many organizations, when you think through what they're responsible for, penetration testing, product sign-off, gated processes, there is a prevailing mindset of, ticking the box, security say no or yes. That has changed, and certainly I'm seeing a lot of that change where they're involved in more and more of the conversation from the outset. So it becomes much more collaborative, much more engaging, and more about enablement versus actually being a blocker or impeding an activity.
Arthur, from your side?
Yeah, so I think which is why the evolution from the CISO historically, or maybe a lot of organizations, is within the risk function. Putting that into the technology function is the right evolution, because that's where the action of the technology is, and actually being able to be right up there at the front of beginning of the conversation is how we change the mindset of the CISO not being seen as the function that says no.
I suppose if the CISO is thinking for the risk function but reporting to the information function, that does just complicate things. We've got the slideshows up. Hopefully this will change it to things. Right, so audience, you've got your phones out. You should already see the question in front of you. So who should ultimately own security capability in your organization? I'll let you guys get on with that. For you guys on the table, has the split between the CTO or CIO and the CISO roles, that split, has it been helpful specialization, or is it sometimes seen as an excuse for diluted accountability?
No, I think it makes sense that it's too big for one position, and security issues, cybersecurity issues, the strategy around cybersecurity has grown to be so important in most organizations. To ask the CTO or CIO to also do that is really going to be tough for anybody.
Sapna?
I actually would agree with that. I think it is a large function, security. But in our organization, I don't think it doesn't create a tension. In fact, I think I've helped people understand security and how it's embedded in the technology function in all the roles. So it's actually been beneficial. It also depends on the characters. their background and their knowledge and their skills base, and how open they are to interweave their knowledge and their security practices in their engineering and product life cycles. So I broadly agree with what John said.
Tim, you want to jump in here as product officer?
Yeah, I'll give a bit of background on where we've kind of been in our transformation. So I think over the last sort of 8 years, we've spent about £1.3 billion on digital transformation. The court service is sort of largely paper-based before that. And we've seen the kind of responsibility, the accountability as CIRO move actually from the CFO, which is a slightly odd setup, into the CDIO now. And that is just a reflection of how much more work we're doing through digital. Now we have a CTO reports to the CDIO and then a specialized CIRO underneath that. And actually, I think it's very, very hard when you are trying to create a kind of culture where you've got empowered product teams to leave all of the responsibility for kind of security on the CIRO. So from our perspective, one of the things we're trying to do is ask them to set the kind of guidelines and the guardrails, and then actually empower, but also hold the product teams accountable for delivering secure products. So from my perspective, I don't sort of just do whatever I like and then get told off when I've done something wrong. Like I try and empower and incentivize my teams to actually build secure products, which they should be incentivized to do because they don't want to spend, their weekends, weeks on end, nights and evenings, responding to cyber attacks. So that's kind of the way in which it's gone in the last 6 years with us.
Yeah. Having a look at the results as they come through, I'm quite interested to see that a lot of the audience, a third of the audience, think that it should be shared equally. Those of you who put that, come find me afterwards, because I want to understand how you share accountability.
Well, I think, just to chime in on that, right? So security it's a risk, lens on,
right.
And if it's everyone's responsibility, it's no one's responsibility.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. That's the danger of it.
Yeah, I'm very clear when I talk to draw a distinction between accountability and responsibility. Somewhere the buck has to stop. Somewhere somebody has to do some work.
I was going to say it depends on whether you mean accountability and responsibility, because you say own, and also what Arthur said is, some CISOs roll into reporting into the CIO or CTO anyway, so it could be both.
Well, I think Arthur's point is still true for owning security, right? Shared accountability is complicated, very complicated. Sapna, what is your board asking you about now that wasn't a year ago?
What they're asking now is actually, I'm not just saying this because the topic is resilience, but they are asking us about our resilience and how ready we are, and also how far we've tested things like our DR, and comparing that to our preventative measures and what our gaps are. They're asking us to be very open and looking for more resilience with some of our supply chains as well. That's what they're asking us, basically.
And how about you?
Yeah, so very similar. So as a regulated business, there's a continued focus around the theme of resilience, and there has to be. We spend a lot of time on understanding and articulating where we have, issues, gaps, concerns around investment priorities, transformation, changes that the business is trying to land as it goes through an evolution. So the business itself today that I'm working for is going through significant change in terms of a simplify, optimize, and then grow cycle. We're now in the optimize cycle of that. And whilst we go through that, we rethink how we position security, how we continue to, in the world of advanced AI, automation, enablement internally, but in the face of this new frontier of AI, how we think about that. So there's a lot of time that I'm spending now with the board, with the risk committees, with the governance community on getting comfortable with how we tread that path to better serve ourselves internally across colleague and citizens, but importantly, how we build even more brilliant products that delight our customers. So yeah, twofold. Resilience, because it's a regulatory requirement, it's not up for discussion. You have to do it, and it's the right thing to do, but also how do you find the agility to be able to build net new and push harder?
So playing on the building product side of things and on governance, Tim, where does governance come from in your organization? I'm
Yeah,
guessing
so
more complicated than for the rest
I
of
mean,
us.
in government, it sort of comes from all angles, and you sort of try and beat it off with a stick to some degree. I mean, I think, I do think actually we have an issue with having too much governance. And I think what's interesting, I agree with you, I don't think that the accountability should be shared equally. I think there's two things which drive decision-making in government, and they are budgets and accountability to some degree. And somehow we try to sort of withdraw accountability to some degree with onerous governance. I think one thing I would say, though, is that when in the kind of topic of cyber and sort of information security, this is something which had about a very low proportion of the kind of time that the board spent concentrating on an item, and has now gone from sort of, they talk about it 5% of the time to sort of, they want to talk about it every single board meeting for the next 3 months. Like, that is completely unheard of. And is a massive change just with the kind of dialogue that is going on in the public sector. So, not in the public sector, but in the public domain, really, around the kind of, the risk and opportunity with AI. So I think, ultimately our governance is going to come down from our board. We are going to start to see a real emphasis on cyber. And actually, I'm not sure, we've probably got a bit of work to do to equip ourselves properly to understand how we react to that. And I think it's not just kind of, external, our internal governance, but also the external environment. We feel like we're in a bit of a race right now. So governance aside, we know that we should expect to be attacked more often, we will be at more risk, and we sort of feel that we're in a bit of a race and need to get to a certain position before the governance asks us to.
Okay, so does that governance really help, like, prevent or inhibit the innovation that you're trying to make, or is it helping innovation in some way? Could it be helping innovation in some way?
Well, I think if you ask me, the governance we have currently, I'm just sort of looking around the room to see who else is here from HMTCS before I throw someone under a bus. But I don't think it is helping us. I think to some degree, we should default to sort of solid engineering practices and embedding SecOps into our teams. That seems to me a more effective way of approaching this problem. And I think we have been a paper-driven organisation, so the way in which we think about risk and information security is sort of documenting and understanding the risk, and then someone signs it off, or we report the incident, and not this is how you build secure software. So I think we have to go on quite a rapid transition, right now, and I think we're not set up in the right way, and it's not really about governance. It's about the right skills embedded in the right teams, and working collaboratively with the CTO and the CISO, and making sure they have some sort of accountability stick to beat us with when we don't do the job properly. We're not quite there yet. Sorry.
I was going to add. I think one of the traps that a lot of organizations fall into is sort of governance theater, right? So actually, just going through the motion of following the policies, and oftentimes they're probably outdated. And you talk about sort of the pace of the change and. With frontier AI and all of that, it's just how do you keep up with it? And I think a lot of people take comfort of actually just following the procedures, but actually not really facing into the reality of the landscape has completely changed. And I think that's when it becomes unhelpful and become a blocker, and then it gets a bad rep.
Okay, so to the panel then, and while the panel looks at that, there's another question for the audience. But so to the rest of you guys, taking governance as a way to help speed up innovation, so give you guide rails to allow you to actually move within certain boundaries. What does that look like? Is that risk-based? Is that I don't know, gut feel? How are you building that as opposed to just we're ticking tick boxes, we're filling out forms to say that we've done the necessary?
So I wouldn't say it's completely risk-based. I agree with what Tim and Arthur both said. It's about embedding practices and being collaborative, and about them feeling safe. But if you understand how teams are working, and you shape your governance from the start to work with those teams and their practices, it doesn't need to be risk-based, because you've set the embedding of the baseline ways of working to align with governance anyway. It only needs to be risk-based for new innovation or new products that are slightly different to the way you're working. And the typical situation with that now is new AI ways of working. So that can be risk-based in those cases. But then it's about whether you've won the hearts and minds of those teams so they come to you early enough. So you shape the governance with them at the early stages. Basically what Tim was saying about being collaborative still.
I think it's important that the CISO sets a clear set of guardrails and rules to follow. So just tell us what they are and we'll follow them. And sometimes that can be a little vague, especially when we're establishing new patterns that are a little bit different than other things. That the hoops that we have to jump through can be frustrating.
But it sounds like Sapna is saying that you should have, those guardrails should work with the ways that you're already working.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it sounds like conversation needs to happen first before any rules are set.
It's got to be pragmatic and it's got to be collaborative conversation.
Trust and relationships, yeah.
Yeah.
You guys want to jump in there on anything on that?
Yeah, no, I think the piece around, risk-based, risk-informed, risk-led, there's different lenses you can apply. So some of it is based on organizational risk appetite. We talk about that. That's kind of like the measure of what is acceptable, what's within the clearly defined frameworks, architectures, reference points of the organization in question. But some of it also is, as the organization changes, as the business evolves, as we lean into more and more what we're talking about now, which is advanced threats, AI sophistication, with a reduced spend, and a focus around security, which is something that I'm sure we're all challenged with. How do you then appropriately and substantively make those risk-based decisions? That's when it becomes more and more important, and that's when you're leaning into finding the balance of agility and appropriate security, hygiene, and governance, right? And that's a different conversation, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I find it quite interesting. The question is sort of, what is the current understanding? Because tomorrow is probably going to be a bit different, right?
Yeah.
So the pace of how this cyber risk changes,
100%.
it quickly gets out of date.
I wish that in addition to the percentages, we also had hard numbers below there. Because like 19% say that they have no idea what's going on. That's rather terrifying.
That's frightening.
Yeah.
None of us voted that, right? None of us on stage picked that option. Excellent. Good. Okay. I do like the fact that 41% developing but improving gaps do still remain, right? That's where everyone should be at.
Totally.
Because if you think you are 100% there, there's a part of your business you're not looking at.
But it's also okay to be at the limited, right? We're on that early journey of maturity. Depending on organizational construct and maturity, that's okay as well, right? As long as there's an understanding of what that journey looks like. Really, really important as well.
100% true. 100%. Okay, so John, are you enabling teams to experiment with AI? And are you doing that safely?
We are definitely pushing AI it's coming from the board and from the corporate level to use AI as much as we can. We restrict our business colleagues from reaching out to commercially available AI models and capabilities. We keep it all in-house because the vast majority of our data is not ours. It's our clients' data. So we cannot have that leaking out into models. So we bring it all in-house, and we have any AI use case has to be, because we're divisional, and certainly on the retail side of the business, it's very geographically organized. So we can't have 3 divisions coming up with, working on the same kind of AI idea. So it's all floats up to a corporate committee who vets it and funds it, and then we go ahead and do it. But we're definitely full speed ahead on enabling AI as much as we can.
How about you guys, Arthur?
So we are definitely experimenting and building with AI. So we have enterprise versions of ChatGPT, Claude, and so we use them, and the adoption is high across the organization. We've got specific roles that are now dedicated to almost sort of pushing the boundaries of see what we can do, but also working very closely with compliance, InfoSec, and risk to make sure that we are clear, to your point, actually what is and what isn't allowed, because actually the biggest danger is people don't understand and they push the boundaries and you have shadow AI, shadow IT just popping up, and that's probably the bigger risk, is not shining a light on those.
Yeah, very similar. So on a accelerated enablement journey, so largely to what's been talked to within the confines of a safe environment within the bank, with appropriate controls and guardrails, limited to Microsoft technology by and large. We're a big E5 house, so where we are pushing on is, developing specific use cases and engineering outcomes to be able to improve, for example, within my team, security operations, and understanding how we can really push the boundaries of Foundry, engineering, Gentic, and enablement. And part of that gets people excited, gets the teams excited, it gets under the skin of technology that they just haven't had a chance to play with, but also gives cross-functional teams a chance to engage. So there's an increasing visibility and productivity gains to be achieved from doing that. But it also takes people through a journey of growth, career, development, which is a really, really positive outcome. On the risk side, spending a lot of time, understandably, talking through and understanding the impact of AI and how we feel about risk governance and capturing and making sure that we have the appropriate articulation of risk. I was at a session today with Microsoft, in fact, and it's clear in terms of how, to the points made earlier, how they're just evolving at such a pace. If you think about the tooling that we have within our organizations around just using basic AI, that in the last 3 months has changed beyond recognition, right? You look at where we were with Copilot, you look at where we are now with co-work and the next iteration of Foundry. It's completely different. Purview, as a basic DLP tool, is unrecognizable, but it's now getting ourselves comfortable with how does the next iteration of that journey look and feel like as we enable more and more. So much change.
Mm-hmm. So sticking with you for a second there, man, the governance around AI, where is that causing friction within your organization?
So I wouldn't say it's causing friction. It's more in terms of establishing the right boundaries and guardrails. So we want to, and the CEO has made a clear, objective to say AI is going to be almost a direction of travel as we move through leaning into much more efficiency, synergy opportunities, automation, much more customer proximity, right? There are very specific defined use cases. Risk's role, mine as a first-line function as part of a risk organization, is to apply and provide the safety net. To say, look, this is how we think about protecting, assuring, and giving the board the satisfaction and comfort that we're thinking about it in the right way, but also still allowing colleagues to experiment, with certain safety and surety. So it's more in the formation and evolution of what a guiding set of principles are, and we iterate on that in the same way we iterate on how we think about automation and enablement. So, yeah.
Okay, so to go to the other end of the spectrum, Tim, how's the friction for you with using AI? Like the governance around that, is it causing friction or is it super easy?
I would say we use AI in sort of 3 main categories. So sort of corporate AI, where you've got a Copilot license, pretty standard, AI in the SDLC, and then we've got AI in our operation. And what's quite surprising is that AI in our operation really is the kind of the big unlock there, is looking at accelerating legal work for judges and legal advisors in the magistrates' courts, right? And that is pretty scary. Like, as someone who understands technology, like, it's, AI is, biased, non-deterministic, and unauditable. It sounds like the worst judge ever.
Yeah.
But because the backlog is significant, and I think this is right, to be honest, like the judges and ministers are super bullish because they're like, this actually, we don't have a lot of money, and like this could solve a lot of our problems. So there's a lot of kind of appetite for risk in the kind of AI in the operation, and I think it's about making sure that people who don't understand the technology understand that we want to start with a kind of low complexity, low risk use cases, and then move slowly through that into higher risk use cases and try and explain like the population level effects. So actually kind of like holding people back a bit. And then AI in the SDLC, which we're like dying to, everybody who works in product is like, this is amazing. This is like the best time to ever work in software development. And our kind of CTO office are just desperately trying to keep on top of the massive amounts of requests. And they're slowing us down. And I think like it's not because they have the wrong risk appetite. We haven't had a major cock up yet. I'm sure we will soon. But like I think we just haven't resourced it right. So to some degree, we've kind of got the bit the wrong way around. Like in our operations, we're super gun-ho, and we should probably pull back a bit and take a bit more time. And then in AI and the SDLC, like we need to move a bit faster. And to some extent, you talk about shadow IT, which I totally agree with. We will start to see huge risks there. But like also, I know there's developers just doing stuff they definitely shouldn't be doing, and because they're getting a massive sort of individual gain from it and not really telling anyone. And the more you slow down the governance, the more of that you're going to get, and the more risks you're going to take on. So that's my sort of picture of it.
So I'm going to take that and swing it back to Sapna. The governance around AI, how is that more than just data governance?
Oh, it's actually a really large topic. I mean, so there are two areas of AI governance. Aside from the co-pilots and AI and SDLC, there is, AI governance in terms of preventing shadow AI, which we do in our organization. I don't have a problem with shadow AI. I'll go into that in a minute. But also, there's also AI agents and agentic AI, which is a huge area for AI governance. In terms of if you have various agents, you need to limit a guardrail what each agent's purpose is, and which data and systems each agent has access to, and make those guardrails and govern the communication between other agents that do other purposes in your agentic AI. Identity is important, so you can have some form of attribution of agents, but also having the ability to override agent activity. And that's where the guardrails of governing what each agent does matters, because if you have proper guardrails for agent activity, you can override, but also have visibility. Because visibility is another problem with agentic AI, as we all know. Having enough visibility is one question, but having humans in the loop isn't the only answer, because as we know with AI, it can overstep or hallucinate when it has gaps in its training. And with a human in the loop, how is a human being going to judge whether something's a hallucination? It can be easy to miss that. So you need to guardrail activity.
I think that's probably the biggest concern that I certainly have with Tim's use of AI in Courts and Tribunals Services, right? If the AI is hallucinating and it's the best judge ever, that's concerning. Yeah,
exactly. So it isn't just about having humans in the loop. It's proper architecture and division of labor. And then, when you do have errors so that they don't compound from agent to agent, you want some error handling and incident management as well.
Yeah.
And then I had the shadow AI governance issue as well. I mean, if you have things like your perimeter and zero trust set up in your environment, and sorry for the non-technical people, but if you have CASB and things, you can see the activity and limit it. Combined with training, you won't have a shadow AI problem. I know that I won't have MCP servers spun up without my knowledge because of that.
So it's beyond just data governance.
Can I just pick up something, a couple of things that Tim was mentioning, sort of your two examples, one around operations and the other one around SDLC, and you talked a little bit about friction, right, around AI governance.
Yep.
I actually see that as like a really good sign, right? Actually, it's a good signal that the organization wants to move fast. It would be much worse if they were sort of sitting back and like, well, actually, IT is just going to say no, so I'm not going to try. And so actually, I think there's this healthy tension that the organization is pushing, and what technology leaders and information security leaders need to do is to make sure that there is the right controls in place and be clear and transparent communication and all of that. But not to, I think there's a huge cultural risk in terms of actually not being able to innovate, try new things, if we just sort of clamp down on everything.
Well, the shadow AI just propagates if you try to pull the reins back, right? It's just that's all that's going to happen. You have to enable it in order to know what's happening. I think it's really important that we provide safe environments for people to work in so that we know what's going on. Otherwise, a ton of stuff is going to go on that we have no idea, right? And that's dangerous.
The two of you tied in perfectly to the next audience question and the question to the panel. So audience, where does your organization currently sit on AI adoption? Whereabouts are you? And for the panel, what is the biggest risk right now? Is it either uncontrolled AI usage or missing the opportunity because governance is too slow, it hasn't kept up?
It's a balance, right? It's a balance between, you know, we don't, you know, I just said that if we have too much, or governance is too slow at making decisions, or it says no all the time, then it will lead to uncontrolled AI use because people will just be going off the reservation. So you have to have, the balance, the needle has to be in the middle somewhere.
Okay.
I would say a bit of a twist on that. So we run a massive operational organization, you know, 16,000 people, you know, 1.5 million cases through the criminal court. Embarrassingly, we don't get every single one of those right, you know. So when we set a kind of accuracy figure for any of our transactions or our, you know, in our business, AI doesn't just have to kind of surpass that. It has to kind of, you know, that accuracy figure, it kind of has to be rated at 100%. Because really the biggest risk, I think, for us is losing public trust. So, you know, the public can understand and sort of, you know, accept the fact that we might make human errors, but they will not accept the fact that we have implemented AI without the right degree of caution. And so we will be held to a much higher standard. And as soon as we lose the public trust, the ministers will lose the appetite, the judges will lose the appetite, and then this kind of, like, we are in a really good position because we have these kind of risk appetites, and that for me is the biggest problem. When I actually look at, I mean, I think there are big risks around uncontrolled use of AI in the SDLC, etc., but that is the thing I worry about on a day-to-day basis because I think it could happen very easily, and so we have to be super cautious of that.
Well, for you guys, it's a binary thing, right? You have the trust of the population or you don't. And if you don't, gaining it back again is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, especially the judges. The judges are kind of critical to this, and they govern us as to what we can and can't do. And they don't. Judges are independent thinkers, as you would expect, because of their job. And so you need to keep them all on side, not just the leadership.
Yeah. Anybody else? Risk of missing out, being too slow, or the risk of it going completely haywire? So it looks like a lot of the audience is moving fast with governance catching up. I do love the fact that somebody actually picked what's governance. And a fewer number of people clicked what is AI?
Yeah, that's my favorite.
I'm looking at esynergy people at this point because you have to be having me on. But that's good. Cautious. I like the 30% who's saying cautious. Okay. Right, elevator pitch time. Should I start down there or up here with you? So what is the one risk or threat that's keeping you up at night?
So not quite keeping me up at night, but because we are pretty much a cloud organization, I am somewhat concerned that when it comes to post-quantum cryptography, I won't have much control over that because it's devolved to the cloud providers.
Okay. John, how about you?
You name it.
I'm in tech. Everything keeps me up
Everything keeps me up at night, moving too slow, moving too fast, data breaches, you name it.
Okay.
We talk a lot about AI, so I'm going to say humans.
They're the worst.
Yeah.
Social engineering, phishing, it's typically the weakest link.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the fact that AI makes it easier to do those things. Yeah, okay. Completely understood.
Yeah, so other than my 3-year-old, who keeps me up quite a lot at night,
Yeah, that's fair.
I would probably echo that. The advances and sophistication and immediacy of the AI attack and what we're dealing with, that is a constant and present, keeps a lot of people awake at night.
Very good. How are you, Tim?
I think, I mean, yeah, a mixture of things. I think for me, you know, I'm not kind of trying to hold back the innovation. My responsibility is to sort of build great products, and so we are pushing the whole time to get more use of tools and to experiment. And I think, you know, the thing that keeps me up at night is, and we haven't done it yet, is when we kind of make a mistake and it goes horribly wrong and we all get told off and have to sort of retract from our experimentation. And so, you know, basically going beyond being too innovative, taking too much risk, and then getting burned. That's the thing that keeps me up at night.
Okay, I'm very impressed. I mean, we are on the 42nd floor here. You had plenty of time in that elevator to have that pitch, but you guys were all pretty quick with your thinking. So obviously you know what's keeping you up. While I'm down there with you, Tim, if a major incident exposed a weakness tomorrow, is it going to reveal a failure of engineering, of governance, or of leadership? Check the room.
Yeah. So I think this is a bit of a politician's answer maybe, but like I would say like one of the biggest problems with working for the court service is that we do too much stuff. Like if we were a private company, I'd be like, right, let's just close 100 product lines because we do 140 different jurisdictions and we're an amalgamation of 2 different organizations from 10 years ago, which means I've got 250 applications under me, and some of them I know everything about, and some of them I couldn't even name them or the abbreviation. And I think the thing that that really is a problem is the fact that like we haven't really been given the funding to maintain the level of kind of security that we need, I think. And I think what we're about to experience is this kind of sudden proliferation of tooling which allows people to just go after every single target, and suddenly many more actors will be active in that space. And that's the thing I worry about, is like the systemic and structural funding situation within government, which prioritizes like different business cases than cybersecurity. And we are effectively, now everyone's waking up to it, we're in a bit of a race against time. And so I think it will be a structural failure in funding and a structural kind of acceptance of a level of risk appetite which will have us come undone. That's what I would expect it to be.
So for the rest of the panel, that sounds like your legacy environments, if you have those, is kind of the situation that Tim is in at the moment, right? Too many products that are necessary because legally you have to maintain them because you have those components to deal with. In our case, we can choose to invest to get rid of some of that legacy. It's a bit harder for you to do.
Yeah, no, exactly.
New legislation?
Well, I think like if
government.
Don't get me started. I mean, I would probably do a lot of things, but I won't speak about them. I think, as a private company, if the bar is, the kind of bar for security and the level of investment for security is raised, then you can effectively sacrifice scope in order to meet that bar. Like I can't sacrifice scope, so I need more funding, or I need to sacrifice quality elsewhere, or I need to do something, or I need to sort of work out how I become more efficient elsewhere. And so to some degree, like, it's an opportunity and a risk. Like, can I make savings in legacy by replatforming? Can I take on, get rid of service contracts in order to do things myself because I'm able to do that more easily because they're making loads of money off service contracts now because they're doing lots more stuff with AI. Like, there's lots of games I can play, but I can't cut scope, and that's the biggest worry for me.
Okay, that's fair. We have another question for the audience. I do love the fact that it stayed in there. Okay, so how confident are you that your organization could withstand a serious cyber incident without significant disruption? To the audience. To the panel, regulation tells us what the minimum bar is, right? What we need to do. Resilience by design takes that much further. But in a cost-pressurized environment, and we all are in those, how do you justify investing beyond compliance, just what's necessary, when the board just wants to know, how do you pass the next audit?
Well, I mean, the way I would do it is an audit is a one point in time, whereas resilience is all year round, and I would justify it by saying that we need to be on it all year round, and this is what it would take and why, basically.
John?
I feel like we're in pretty good shape. I think it's a constant thing. Resilience is a constant effort. It's not one point in time. So I think actually we're in pretty good position with respect to withstanding an incident. I think we do a lot of testing. We build security in as we build things. we do have a significant legacy technology estate that we spend more time mitigating vulnerabilities than anything else. Shutting those down is a lot harder than you would think, but I feel pretty confident that we're in solid shape at Gallagher.
Okay. Arthur?
So I think it's important because I think all of our organizations have quite a wide surface area. It's really important to be precise on what are those services that needs to be Fort Knoxed, and what are you willing to not be as, because if you try to do everything, nothing sort of really gets done. And I think that's really the key thing. And so then you can have a conversation about, okay, well, where are you going to put your investments towards? And that becomes an easier conversation rather than, well, we need to make everything, gold-plated.
Right.
Well, everything can't be locked down completely, right? Because otherwise we're NT4 and we unplugged it and removed the networking stack and it passes the NIS standard at that point, right?
Yeah. It's a when, not if, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, quite absolutely. It is that mindset of, let's say, assumed compromise, and thinking through how you would minimize disruption to business, get to the measure of understanding that your incident management processes are robust, well rehearsed, and responsive. But I think there's also a layer of, we spend a lot of time on scenario planning, testing, simulation. So that's all in the mapping to specific risk indexes or outcomes where we might find ourselves susceptible to. So we take 13 scenarios. Top 5 of those would be, for example, things like ransomware events, denial of service, malicious insider, iterations of all of the above. And you work through methods, technology, tooling, process, objectives to try and manage and mitigate the risk of that happening as much as possible. A lot of that is in modeling and methodology and systems and supplier-led processes based on what you are as an organization accountable for. The biggest challenge is when it effectively leaves your perimeter or the boundaries of your perimeter and enters into second party, third party, fourth party, where you have little or no control, which is where, more often than not, 90% of the risk resides. So, yeah.
I think I'd agree with Arthur, you've got to prioritize. I think we prioritize crime massively because obviously the consequences are huge. And also I think we've recently experienced one of our partners in the justice system, the legal aid agency, going through a massive cyber attack. So I think that has been a huge wake up for us. And to watch, we have API integrations for the legal aid agency. So we went through the kind of whole setting up of what we would call a gold command in government, and all of the kind of reporting and all of the people who get involved in one of those incidents. So I think before that had happened, I think we were pretty, we may have been unprepared to some degree, but now we have done a lot of work to try and make sure that we are prepared. I think the consequences, I do think in courts of a significant breach are quite scary. And I think very quickly you end up when we do the scenario planning, it quickly ends up, now we're in Cobra, especially in the criminal courts. So, and that is quite interesting in itself because the more and more you can, I think the more you can keep the scenario within your own organization is a measure of how well you have managed to architect things in a way you can contain things. But yeah, don't like to think about it too much, basically.
I would love to comment on the fact that there's zero confidence, but I'm going to just skip right over that. Give the audience one more question. What's the biggest barrier to a strong security culture in your organization? And to the panel, we've talked about some accountability stuff, we talked about governance stuff. Who's actually responsible for security?
Everybody.
Oh, sorry, everybody, yes. I was just
Any-
looking at the-
Anyone, any advances on everybody?
I was going to say, the question, what's the biggest barrier to a strong security culture? I guess to some degree, what it feels like to build a product and reveal or talk about the fact you have a security vulnerability. So what happens at that point? You know, is it an interesting conversation where you discuss with the security team how you're going to fix it, and you all feel good at the end of the day because you've made a product more secure, or is it you getting beaten up because, you know, the security team's default reaction is to effectively raise an incident, throw you under the, you know, the bus, and I think actually this goes back to what I was saying earlier, like trying to create a culture where, you know, building secure products is an objective of the product team, not just the security team, is really important. And if you get excited about products being, you know, good for users but also secure, then that's the perfect culture to generate. And actually, it motivates sort of everybody to obey the guardrails and everything else, really. And I think that's the only way, that's the only way you'll truly achieve like everyone feeling responsible for security.
Yeah, so the answer, everyone is the right answer, right? Everyone is responsible because we all do things that can make the organization more or less secure, depending on how we choose to do them. Quick question while we get the panel going and we get the questions coming in. To everyone here, what do you know now that you wish you knew 10 years ago? Share prices aren't an answer that I've got.
Good one.
That OpenAI wasn't going to stay open. Go on, Arthur, jump in. You've got a thought?
I think it's probably the pace of how quickly things change, and actually building the awareness and the culture to adapt. I think that's probably less than any sort of technological sort of, you know, impact. But I think it's just the resilience of the organization to be able to adapt.
You know, it's an evolution, right? So if I had known something, things I know today in my day-to-day job, if I knew them 10 years ago, I wouldn't have known what they meant. You know what I mean? So it's just an evolution of this environment that you learn from as you go. I don't think there's anything magic about knowing something 10 years ago, honestly.
Cool. Do we have any audience questions? Do we have cubes running around?
Yeah.
We've got a question over here. You want to throw the cube forward? Just throw it down, man.
Throw it, toss it.
The whole point is it's foam. Yeah. There we go. Talk into the light.
I've got a question regarding.
It was working.
Just speak loudly. So it's interesting to look at all these AI companies producing all these models, and we trust them a lot. We see all the transparency, like Anthropic's being very transparent, producing lots of documentation, model cards, etc. I've been reading through the Constitution, Anthropic's Constitution about AI. The one thing that stuck out to me was how they're talking about the models. They're as if they're having conversation with it.
Yeah.
And they're trying to be nice to it, trying not to insult it for the future. And then you hear about mythos, being like a wild animal in a cage, you know, roaming around, and they don't want to release it. Is this something that we should be concerned about? Or should we just trust that they're doing everything that they can to let us use AI safely?
Anybody else want to take that question?
I think, first of all, I would push back on the statement of we trust the AI companies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether that was sarcastically meant.
We start off with that, and I suppose, you know, in the theme of resilience is, you know, as we are adopting, all of us are adopting, our organization adopting a lot more AI tools. I think actually understanding how do we operate as a business without those AI tools is more and more important, right? Because we're going to be more and more reliant on them, and so that's probably the.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only thing I'd add to that is there've been quite a lot of conversation with the board and the risk committees around how we think about, you know, the new models. You talk about Mythos, you talk about Daybreak, we talk about, and it's caused more conversation and thought than we would have imagined, right? For the right reasons, right? Because one, every single FTSE 350 today has had correspondence, you know, to the board or executive around how we're going to deal with responding to this. So it's creating the right level of conversation. It's about, back to what we talked about earlier, how do you then apply that to where the business is on its journey? So there is a little bit of skepticism and nervousness and caution and trepidation that you've got to apply in terms of how you unpack it and use it. But there's also you've got to raise the bar in terms of education and awareness at all levels, right? In terms of whether you're thinking about the engineers who are engaging or the executives who will be, signing off investment opportunities or willingness to take more risk. So it's doing a hell of a lot, certainly for me as a security professional, in terms of focusing the mind and getting people to think differently about how we position enterprise security. Yeah.
As an interesting aside, the addition of polite terms in your queries to AI increases your token burn. So I'm sure that Anthropic would love you to be more polite to your AI.
Well, that's what I worry about, the commercials surrounding AI. It's the drug dealer model, right? Have some AI. It's free. Like, it's going to be so much fun. And then you get hooked. And now and then the token, all of a sudden they start to assign finances to the tokens. And then you're stuck. So an ROI vanishes.
So AI is the smack of
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just like cloud was.
Yeah, exactly. And we all saw that moving to the cloud was so much cheaper, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It was the same model, exactly the same model. So yeah, I don't trust them either.
Any other questions? A couple over here. Just throw it across, and they will.
I hope you don't take someone out. Yeah.
Oh,
it's close to somebody who wants it. There we go.
Swipe.
I'm going to go first from the guys.
It's soft.
Oh, there's mic here. Go for it. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Cool. So as you mentioned, AI is now being used to hack, data breach, everything. I think that every organization should instantly start to put red teams and pen testing using AI to basically be before the hackers. Do you agree with me? So there should be like no limits on red teaming with the best AI tools.
Ooh, okay. So I'm gonna phrase that slightly differently. Yeah. I'm gonna also aim it at the non-CISOs here. The question is, with AI being able to do the hacking it can, which absolutely we've seen the capabilities there, should red teaming using AI be given a broader scope to try and counteract, I guess, the danger that actual adversaries are using AI in that way? Currently, pen tests are very narrowly scoped, right?
Yeah.
They're given very clear boundaries.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's not the case in the real world.
I mean, one of the things is I found interesting in the last 6 months is people whose responsibility it isn't to pen test have just been, like, all our code is open source, right? We're a government agency, so anyone can kind of have a crack at it, which has meant that a lot of our developers have, because they like playing with the tools, which has found vulnerabilities, which is slightly worrying because you would expect that other people have found them. Nothing too bad. But yeah, I think like the way in which we're thinking about it is, why wouldn't you employ a team centrally that just goes around having a go at everything all the time? And why wouldn't you try and automate that? I mean, I can't see a downside to that. It's happening to you anyway, you just don't know the actors. So why not, try and get there first?
Yeah. Cool. Anybody else want to jump in, or should I grab the next question? Shameless plug while we get the next question lined up. Speak to me about pen testing using AI, some of the OWASP stuff that I'm working on, and some of the things that we're working on with some of our associates. Quite interesting in that space.
I had a question kind of following on from the previous one, where being on the execution side, always found that never had enough input from information security. Getting information security staff is really hard. Yeah, so you always want to have more information security, in my experience. It's always better to have more than not enough. As someone who's involved on the execution side, my focus is not front and center security, it's delivering functionality. So having those information security guys is really the backup that makes me sleep well at night. If you do have powerful AI that can act in a white hat capacity, my question to the panel is what are you doing to put that kind of capability, if you had it, in the hands of the people who need that information security review constantly going on to build kind of like a immune system, if you like, that's constantly working, constantly put cyber defense on your side constantly. What would be your plan to enact that so that developers can just get on and code, knowing they've got a super intelligent AI expert looking over their shoulder saying, you don't want to do that?
I'll let the panel grab it. Anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, so look, having automated testing in a deployment pipeline has been sort of the last, few decades, right? Actually inserting really powerful models, and whether it's, when we get access to Mythos, or, even before that, we are already looking at doing that in terms of code scanning, et cetera. And so that's just one lens on how we think about using AI in a defensive posture.
Right.
Yeah, I think everyone on the panel is going to agree that if AI is attacking us, we should absolutely be.
You have to match the weaponry of your adversaries, right? So.
Yeah, we're not still using catapults while the other side's got nukes. Yeah. I think that one actually works, or doesn't it? No. Okay. Yeah, it does.
Hello, thank you so much. Very enjoyable panel. Building on the facilitator's comment on the first poll, there is no such thing as shared accountability. Who would be accountable if AI messes up?
That's a good question. Who's accountable in your organization if AI messes up?
I can go first. So for AI in the SDLC, it's me. And then
I love that kind of ownership.
And then operationally, if we implement something, actually this is where I get quite worried, because if we pilot something, so a great example is we're piloting at the moment summarization of case evidence in the magistrate's court. Now, we are constraining it as much as possible to remove bias and make it deterministic. And I think so we're quite confident it's not going to introduce bias. The judges are much more gung-ho because they sort of, they think, well, when I'm sat in court, I understand bias, I'll be able to kind of remove the bias, if I do think it's biased, as I'll have read the papers as well. And the reality is, on a population level, I know that's not going to happen. So at a population level, am I accountable? The judge is accountable in court as the individual, but am I accountable? The senior presiding judge has signed off the pilot, so I think he's accountable. I hope he's accountable. But does he fully understand the population level effect of the bias? I think that's the thing that worries me. So as much as possible, operationally, try and shift the blame to somebody else, but I think ultimately some of it might land on my shoulders.
Yeah, I'll just maybe add, in the bank, the CTO is responsible as a sponsor for the deployment and enablement for AI. So fundamentally, that's operational in focus. So if there was a negative outcome, whatever that is, interpret it as you will, as a result of AI, then the CTO fundamentally would be on point. Yeah.
I just really quickly, I think in the last sort of 3 years, the disruptive ability of AI is and I think we talk about AI as a thing, and I know that at the C level there's AI in the titles, etc., and I think that's fine, but I think we will get into a maturity state as an industry, as the world, where it is part of the technology. And then so if you look at sort of AI as a technology and how you wield it, then really it's about who's actually using that technology and designing it and implementing it. And so whereas for now probably is the right thing when things are moving really fast and there's a lot of changes, to have a more centralized view, I do think that it will be dispersed when the organization gets a bit more mature around how to use AI.
I think just to add to the answer, depending on the organization, depending on the industry you're in, the regulators of those industries will have very clear thoughts of their own. We've got quite a few different regulated environments here. And with the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, that looks like it's going to be the board at this point. So it's right at the top. Next question. Yep.
I find it interesting that given all the topics we've covered, everybody's focused on AI, but I'm going to follow the trend. And I have to admit that part of this question, or to some extent these questions have been answered since I wrote them down during the talk. But in the context of corporate adoption of AI as opposed to individual, when pressures are different, where is that pressure coming from? Is it motivation beyond just buzzwords and FOMO? Who really makes the decisions? Sorry. Who really makes the decisions about what is permitted and what is not? Are they competent? And do they really understand the mechanisms? Because it's not just learning to drive a car.
So where's the push coming from to adopt AI? And who's making the decisions about it?
I can have a crack if you'd like. So I think in government, there's a lot of pressure from the current government because it's seen as a sort of huge opportunity, which I think it is. I think, and from the board level, I think how well do they understand the capability that's been introduced by Gen AI? I think that's quite limited, but to some degree, I think our ability to understand it is quite limited. And it's to some degree answering your question as well, as I said before, the models are biased, unauditable, and non-deterministic. So how do you understand the capability of a model that has those three characteristics? You can't unless you constrain it to the point where it is deterministic and it's not biased. So to some extent, in my head, they're right to push us. We're the architects who effectively have to set up use cases in a way where we know that we can get some to pass in a non-biased and deterministic way, and some will fail. The speed at which the model develops, more and more of those use cases will start to pass, and it's kind of our job to hold them back and not push the high-risk use cases into production before we can kind of drive those characteristics within those use cases. So I think as much as I'd like to kind of throw the ministers and the board under the bus and say they don't understand the technology and they're pushing us too fast, I actually think we don't understand the technology, and it's very hard to until you've got that kind of framework and the way in which you think about it.
I think the pressure is coming from the board and from corporate leadership, and there's been some recent literature about the use of AI and its impact on the broking sector and how it's going to replace brokers, and it's depressed stock prices across the sector. And I think it's a reaction to that pressure on the stock prices to adopt AI and demonstrate to the marketplace that we're adopting AI and it's going to make us better, not replace us. So I think that's where the pressure is coming from for us.
I think there's some variation of that that's true for the rest of us as well. Yeah. And that kind of essentially what came out of your answer as well there. If we don't do it,
somebody else will.
We're going to get left behind. Yeah. Right.
Hi.
Thank you guys. Oh, one more question.
Yes.
Yeah?
Thank you so much. It's Nayam Lakbi from Chief AI Office in Government Digital Services. My question is around, is resilience about only cyber, or there are other factors, other things that we have to be considering as resilience, particularly from AI adoption perspective? Thank you.
So I will let the panel answer this, but there is a section of questions that I didn't get to this evening around where this AI is running and how we can rely on it not being here in the UK. And I think there's a broader question there around security and safety and how they're different. But okay, to the panel.
So I think it is broader, a lot broader. So we think about it, resilience, clearly cyber and AI in terms of how we protect, defend, secure, but also wider from a business continuity, disaster recovery, and availability perspective. And that's the wider, certainly from banking perspective, that we have to think about it organizationally, but also from a supply chain perspective, right? Understanding and where and how we are increasingly working in ecosystems where we are wholly and largely dependent on third-party, fourth-party, operators. So the resilience there is way beyond, anything that we do within the bank and how we think about it. Yeah.
That's right. I would think it's beyond cyber because resilience covers technology outages and BCP, but also in terms of AI, it's not just about cyber. You know how models, they degrade over time. Their responses, they're not repeatable responses. That also is part of resilience in terms of AI as well.
I don't know who's in the room, so I won't mention any names, but a retailer that I've done some work with recently, following on another retailer's misfortune with malware, decided that their backup plan is going to be, there's old-fashioned credit card machines that you scrape a credit card through. And that's definitely not a tech solution to that problem. So I think it's broader.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate the questions. They were good questions. If you see esynergy people running around with I think we've got a blue lanyard on. I've got stuck mine in my pocket. Yeah, if you see one of these, feel free to ask us more questions. Feel free to ask any of the panel members who hopefully will stick around and have a drink with us afterwards. Thank you all for your time. Cool.